Moment, I'll be talking with Katrina Pearson from America First Action Committee about what you might have missed from last night's raucous rally in Pennsylvania. Plus, one of the world's leading thinkers, Neil Ferguson, is here with a take you haven't yet heard on the proposed Trump-Kim Jong-un summit. And what an amazing panel. Kennedy, Kevin Jackson and Namiki Konst are all here. We've got so much to discuss. President Trump will be visiting California next week to inspect prototypes of the border wall. So we'll be getting into that. Plus, we'll debate the Trump tariffs and the establishment pushback against this populist move. But first, behind the entertaining headlines, sleepy Chuck Todd, low IQ Maxine Waters, how Donald Trump wants to face Oprah in 2020. President Trump actually made some major policy announcements last night at that fiery, hyped-up rally in Pennsylvania, like this one, for example.
Today, I'm calling on Congress to stop funding sanctuary cities so we can save American lives.
So, while others might concentrate on the nicknames and the bravado, let's talk about the issues that actually affect your life. Joining me now, Katrina Pearson, spokesperson and senior advisor for America First Action, the outside super PAC for President Trump. Katrina, thanks so much for joining us and helping us to break down what came out of that amazing event last night. There was so much there. Let's start with that sanctuary cities remark, which I think most people seem to have missed, but it's really important. It's such a big issue. He's talking there about defunding sanctuary cities, asking Congress to do that. What do you think is going to happen next with that proposal from the president?
Well, this is absolutely a large issue, so I'm really glad you're talking about it. We're talking about municipalities inside the United States who are, by design, unlawfully keeping criminal aliens inside the country, putting their own citizens at risk, run by Democrats. This is a very huge issue because we have situations like Kate's Island, for example. Individuals who are in this country and have committed crimes, even felonies, have been deported and come back because there is a place for them to stay. It's unacceptable. And the president has been very consistent, even during the campaign, about taking on illegal immigration and sanctuary cities for this reason.
But do you think there's any appetite in D.C. and Congress for actually doing anything along the lines he's talking about there?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that many Republicans support. We saw that on the campaign trail as well. You see now Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department is taking on a mayor out in California for doing unlawful things and putting Americans at risk. So I do think there is an appetite. And what's really important here is we now have a Democrat Party that is in such disarray with regards to their policies and even their identity at this point. The Trump derangement syndrome has reached a delusional stage because now they're actively campaigning for people who aren't even their constituents. They are absolutely pushing the American citizen aside and catering towards people in this country illegally.
So, Katrina, we're going to be talking about that on the show later on with the panel. I just wanted to move to a couple of other things that came out of the rally and things that have been in the news breaking over this weekend. One thing the president said that I think took a lot of people by surprise was this very hard line that he set out on drugs and drug dealers. And he was suggesting that one way of dealing with the problem of drugs in our communities might be to introduce the death penalty for drug dealers. Now, I think a lot of people might go along with the sentiment there. We want to get tough on drug dealers. Do you think that is a policy announcement that's going anywhere?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's just a sentiment. You know, this is a president who is very much engaged with the fight that we have in this country. I can recall being in New Hampshire and other states that were just really hit hard by opioid addiction and abuse. And it's really sad and disheartening to see the death and destruction caused by drugs of all kinds that are flooding the children in our country, and it's heartbreaking. But it's absolutely a sentiment, and the president has a way of getting across his position. So what this did is it sent a warning to the drug cartels, to those who mean to do harm to our children in this country, that we have a president that's not going to sit on the sidelines and just have a bunch of committees to talk about committees. He's going to take action.
So, Katrina, one last thing before you have to go. Another story that broke over the weekend was the suggestion that President Trump is actually interviewing a lawyer who worked for President Bill Clinton on his impeachment trial, getting ready for a potential impeachment proceeding after the midterm elections. Now, the president knocked that back and said he's very happy with his legal team. I think he put out a tweet that we can take a look at on that. But don't you think actually, given the possibility that the House might go to the Democrats after the midterms, however much many people might want that not to happen, given that it might happen and they're so determined to impeach President Trump, don't you think it's a good idea for him to be getting ready for that?
No, I mean, the president said it's not true, so I'm gonna go with that. But I'll also say that I'm not one of those people that even believes for a second that the Democrats are going to win back the House. I've been all over this country. The president's been all over this country. They have zero position and policies that are good for America. But also, this is a story, once again, by the failing New York Times with anonymous sources. I just can't give credit to those. And honestly, Steve, this is a story about lawyers talking about, or alleged discussions about lawyers lawyering. It's no big deal. It's lazy journalism, to say the least.
All right, Katrina, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you being here. See you soon. All right, let's bring in the panel. Host of Kennedy on Fox Business Network. Here she is, Kennedy, from KJRadio.com, Fox News contributor and author of Race Pimping, Kevin Jackson, and correspondent for the Young Turks and former national surrogate for Bernie Sanders, Namiki Konst. So look, Katrina knocked it back there. I think you'd expect her to do that. But there's a serious point here. I want to talk about the impeachment point, because that is something that could so derail anything substantive that the president might want to do. The Democrats are dying to initiate impeachment proceedings. It isn't beyond the realms of possibility that the Republicans lose the House. Shouldn't he be getting ready, preparing?
Yeah, and I think you maintain the House with good ideas and good policies, and that's what it comes down to. And for most people, right now it's the economy. The economy has been doing well. It can do better. It can do even better. People can make more money. Wages can go up. We can have free trade, which I know we're going to talk about.
Oh, I can't wait to talk to Kennedy about that.
In the show.
It's going to be so fun. It's going to be a proper
But, you know, what it comes down to,
debate.
and this is what makes me laugh when Democrats talk about impeachment.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm a libertarian. I'm an independent. I'm not affiliated with any party. But I think it's hysterical that liberals are going to end up with Mike Pence, who is far more conservative and very popular on Capitol Hill, and he will get through an agenda. Because if you look at the president, he's got some very Democratic leanings when it comes to tariffs and gun control and even immigration. And the president is willing to talk to Democrats. Mike Pence is going to be a completely different story if you think impeachment is going to go through, which it absolutely will not in the Senate.
You're never going to see it. You're never going to see impeachment because there's nothing to impeach Donald Trump about. The Democrats are going to get crushed in 2018. They can, if they want to be a trombone player with a page, in the midterm elections.
That's so interesting. Anthony Scaramucci was here the other week. He said exactly the same.
They're going to get crushed.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, to Kennedy's point, Donald Trump has been the most amenable president to Democrats. They wanted DACA. They wanted 600, 800,000. He said, let's make it 1.5 million. He's up in the game every single time, and we see exactly who's at fault here and who are the people playing hardball. Donald Trump wants to meet these folks halfway, and they're not doing it. And the final point, the economy is booming. And not only is it booming, the tsunami that's going to come, because think about it, all the companies that are coming back, they haven't gotten back. The trade policies that he implemented, where we lowered the tariff on 183 things in China, items in China that we can now sell, that hasn't kicked in. Most of the policy that Donald Trump has done outside of the tax bill have not even kicked in. So wait until Apple builds that facility. Wait until Amazon puts those new jobs. The tsunami's not yet to come.
I agree with what both of you are focusing on, which is Namiki, that it is these underlying issues and the messages around them, things that really affect people's life, that actually will determine the election. But it does seem to me that the Democrats are basically focused. I mean, the impeachment story is a huge part of what they're doing. You've got Tom Steyer from here in California spending a fortune on ads going on about impeachment.
He's not elected, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? They're really pushing this impeachment thing.
Sure.
Why aren't they talking about the economy?
I think that they should be talking about I think it's a yes-and situation. We can handle two things at once, Democrats. I'm staring at you if you're watching. We as a party can handle two things at once. I really believe it. Listen, I mean, if there's an investigation that leads to the RNC, for instance, sure, I agree with you. Mike Pence could sneak things by, but he would be very well tied to that RNC situation. I think right now, the problem with Donald Trump is that you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know how they're going to react. It's very hard for Democrats to respond, especially at a time when we're going through our own disarray. I think what we're going to see, especially through the tariff situation, is that the Republicans aren't that united either. And if they go through an investigation that leads to impeachment, then Donald Trump is going to have to rely on a Republican Party.
Do you honestly think? I mean, I know that's a dream come true. And I was talking to a good friend of mine last night who is a liberal Democrat who said, "Wouldn't it be wonderful if Democrats took back the House of Representatives? Trump gets impeached, Pence gets impeached." I'm like, stop there. Pence is not getting impeached, and even if the president is impeached, let's say Democrats take control of the House and they do that, it's not going to go over with 2/3 of the Senate. It is not going to happen.
I don't disagree.
Such a waste of energy. Steve's absolutely right. If you want votes, focus on people and their pocketbooks and the economy and creating more jobs.
We got lots of time. We're going to get to all these issues. I just want to, personal tribute to Kennedy there for, your personal effort to break down the filter bubble and polarization and actually talk to people who disagree with us.
It's a good thing.
He's being nice for our debates.
It's very good for our democracy.
Got a strategy here.
That's coming up, a big night of news as we're seeing more from last night's rally, the president's upcoming trip to visit border wall prototypes in California, and my exclusive interview with Neil Ferguson on the proposed meeting with Kim Jong-un. But next, my take on the Trump tariffs and his latest rift with the GOP elite. The panel will weigh in too, especially Kennedy. Please.
Mark Levin sits down with Benjamin Netanyahu from his Middle East stance.
You're getting support from the West when you draw a line like that.
To the future of our two countries.
We're the same civilization, and Americans overwhelmingly understand that.
Catch the must-see interview tonight on Life, Liberty, and Levin.
Welcome back to The Next Revolution. We've just been treated here to Kennedy's impression of a leading politician. I'm going to say who. One day, maybe, you will get to hear it too. President Trump's decision to impose tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, you see I got that right, has caused the first big disagreement between him and the establishment Republicans in Washington. All week, they were out attacking him, from Paul Ryan to the Wall Street Journal. There's more of it just today.
I'm really concerned that this is a counterproductive, as well as you could really result in retaliatory actions by our trade partners.
But I'm concerned that a tariff can result in a tax on the very same people that we're trying to help in this economy.
When you say, all right, let's have tariffs, but let's couple that with uncertainty, that's almost worse. I mean, those are dual poisons to the economy.
Why is the establishment so up in arms about this? What did they think they were getting with Donald Trump? As I said before, he's a populist, not a Republican. He beat the establishment Republicans in 2016, every single one of them. And one of the main reasons he beat them was trade. He made clear he would get rid of the open borders trade agenda that helped the elite but hurt American workers. For at least 4 decades, the ruling elite in Washington, the politicians, the deep state bureaucrats, and most importantly, the big donors and lobbyists that, as we show you all the time on Swamp Watch, really pull the strings, well, they've been pushing an ideological trade agenda that says we'll open up to other countries and everyone will benefit. Well, some people benefited for sure. China, our biggest global enemy, we made them richer and put them on the path to the world domination they now think is within their reach. Great job, Presidents Clinton, Bush and Obama, who helped make that happen. The CEOs and Wall Street wheeler dealers, they benefited too. They rose above the humdrum concerns of their own country and became citizens of the world. Who cares where you make money, as long as there's more of it for you? And oh boy, was there more of it for them. That's the story of the last 40 years. The rich got richer and half the country got poorer. Incomes went down and jobs went away, devastating families and communities in every part of America except the places where the smug elitists who pushed these policies actually live. Now, finally, there's change. The president, just as he promised and was elected to do, is pushing back on the open borders trade agenda. We're told by the elites these tariffs are stupid. They'll just lead to higher prices for American products made with imported steel and aluminum. In the end, more jobs will be lost in those industries than the jobs protected by the tariffs. But why should prices go up? There's no law of economics or the market that says that. If they wanted, the big corporations complaining about the tariffs could keep prices the same, keep their workforce the same, and cut their profits. But of course they won't do that because cutting their profits affects them, whereas raising their prices affects you. Here's the bottom line for the establishment elite in the GOP and elsewhere. We tried it your way for years. It may have worked for you, but not the American worker. Let's put them first for a change. That is the next revolution we need. Please tell me what you think. Follow us on Twitter and have your say at Steve Hilton X and at NextRevFNC. Kevin, let's start with you. What do you make of the tariffs?
I think it's a great, I think Donald Trump doing this is exactly what we want him to do. And your last point that summed it up is exactly spot on. So they put the steel tariffs on. What does the CEO of U.S. Steel do? He opens up a plant I think in the Madison plant right across the river in St. Louis, 500 new jobs. Prior to that, they had opened up 200 new jobs when Trump was elected. So you've already got the steel industry coming back. But the bigger issue about tariffs and manufacturing is when you do start bringing manufacturing back to the United States, you bring back a lot of ingenuity that we lose. When we lost manufacturing, it wasn't the jobs. The jobs are nothing in comparison. It's the ingenuity. What comes from manufacturing? Look at an Intel, for example, and what's gone on with the Pentium processor that nobody remembers because there's been so much evolution of that process in computing industry. That's what happens. And when we bring that back, it's good for the economy. But the other thing that I like about what Trump is doing is he's very selective about what he's bringing back. He doesn't need to bring back plastic toys. China can make all of those that they want. But steel and aluminum and those types of things are things that, quite frankly, the United States depends on for infrastructure. So I think it's a perfect move. Couldn't be better done. And not the final point, the unions. You know, who's going to be talking about that? Donald Trump's actually bringing back jobs for the union.
All right, well, we'll see. I think Namiki might have something to say about it. Come on, Kennedy. Come and have a go.
Everyone's lost their minds. I mean, it's just incredible. Here you are. Everyone realizes the positive sum effect of tax relief, cutting taxes and allowing the economy to grow. Yeah. Look what happens. You know, you talk about the president deregulating, lowering taxes. It's some of the best possible moves he can make. And people who are champions of that and living in government, they're the ones who are up in arms. It's not just establishment Republicans. It is free market economists who understand what Adam Smith first published, that making money is a positive-sum game. It is not a zero-sum game, and that is the president's proposal.
Yeah, but we don't have, I agree, but we don't have free markets right now because these other countries like China, Elon Musk was saying, you know, he sells cars in China, they put on 25% but when they come here, it's 2%.
Okay,
Anyway, so I've got to get Namiki.
It's a global economy. I mean, that's exactly it. We're not competing with ourselves here. But I think going back to this worker point, if Donald Trump was doing this and helping workers, maybe say the way that Bernie Sanders would have done it, I would agree with you. But the problem is that he's doing this and workers are suffering. I mean, you mentioned Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the petri dish for assault on the American workers. Wisconsin is where they have, you know, eliminated collective bargaining, where unions have been weakened, where unions over the past 10 years have been weakened. Exactly. And you know who suffers? The middle class suffers. You have income inequality worse than it's ever been because of deregulation. Trickle-down economics does not work.
Okay, by the way, the term trickle-down economics, that is an empty phrase. You don't know what you're saying, and it means absolutely nothing. And when you have then let's talk about trickle-down economics. Let's talk about a big corporation like Apple relocating and bringing factories here. What's wrong with that? I mean, you have a company that's profiting from tax cuts who is bringing facilities to the United States
and not protecting its workers. Workers literally who have jobs are forced to go on government. I mean, you want to talk about the cost of the deficit and how it's going up? That is what happens when you don't protect workers.
Capitalism is when you have giant corporations in the pockets of politicians, and they're the ones who are making deals with each other.
Absolutely.
So you have big corporations who are encouraging their workers and helping them to sign up
paying them
government program
and paying them 30% of what they use.
Wages are going up. Look, let me
not always.
I think we need to.
Hourly wages are
I think we need to let Kevin close it out.
Hang on a second. Look, I've done business in China. I understand the complexities of it quite substantially. The fact that we've got these jobs coming back, it's amazing to me these people lament jobs coming back by the droves. By the way, Barack Obama said these are jobs that would never come back. And she says, well, where are the wages? They're 30% less. There are jobs that we no longer had that are coming back by the hundreds of thousands.
That's not true at all.
By the hundreds. Oh, really? Really, by the hundreds. By the hundred. Apple bringing back thousands of jobs. Amazon bringing thousands of jobs. More jobs coming back into this country than at any time, and certainly during the Obama era. And they lament this. What could possibly be wrong with this?
You know what the problem is?
Sorry, we got to
minimum
stop.
wage. I mean, that's what is destroying workers.
Minimum wage.
I think we're going to keep debating.
Who are not making enough money in America.
Well, you hear animation. I hope you enjoy it. Here's your Robo Flipper. Your job is sorry. No longer enter the workplace.
We're going to talk about your fascinating new book. We'll get to that in a second, but I just wanted to get you on this incredible news story of North Korea. I can't think of someone more qualified to help us understand it. You're a historian, world-renowned historian. More interestingly, I think you've always been a kind of anti-establishment conservative. And this move by President Trump on North Korea has really kind of left the foreign policy establishment with egg all over their faces. What do you make of it in the context of the history of this conflict?
Steve, it's great to be with you. The overwhelming majority of pundits are screaming that Donald Trump has made a terrible mistake. These are the same people who were screaming last year that he was making a terrible mistake by threatening North Korea with fire and fury. So it's always a terrible mistake in the eyes of the Washington foreign policy elite. And I think they don't understand nearly as well as President Trump the way to get to North Korea, which has been through China. If one looks at this from the vantage point of Beijing, President Trump's exerted two kinds of pressure over the last year. One has been the threat of military action, which really did have, I think, people pretty worried, not just in Pyongyang, but in Beijing. And the second has been the threat of a trade war. And the tariffs, which the same foreign policy pundits have been slagging off like crazy, have also got China's attentions. I think the reason that there has been real movement, the reason that Kim Jong-un has stopped firing missiles and is now open to talks, is that there has been meaningful pressure. And remember, the exact opposite happened under Donald Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, who allowed the North Korean program, the nuclear program, to advance at an extraordinary rate. So by comparison with President Obama, President Trump has made significant progress. I'm not saying there's no risk to meeting with Kim Jong-un. There clearly is a risk. But in foreign policy, you have to take risk if you face this kind of threat.
Well, I think that's such a great summary. I basically exactly my thoughts on it too. And I just wanted to ask you now, just again, looking back over the years, what do you think the chances are of this really big goal that they're talking about, which is the denuclearization of North Korea, not just a slowing down, but a complete abandonment of any of their nuclear ambitions? Do you think that's even a realistic goal?
I think it is a realistic goal. I don't think that it's 100% probability, but nor do I think it's 0%. The Chinese are open to the idea of a denuclearized Korean peninsula, and that is the key variable. Remember, this is really a negotiation with a superpower, China, with North Korea as a rogue regime between the two superpowers, the United States and China. It's a difficult thing to do this. It's perfectly possible that Kim Jong-un will be like his father. He'll cheat. He'll come, meet, talk, and then carry on with his nuclear arms program. So we have to accept that he is a highly untrustworthy, highly unreliable negotiating partner. But I think the pressure on China is really the key to all of this. And I think President Trump has hit on rather an ingenious formula, simultaneously raising the possibility of unilateral military action by the United States against North Korea, which would blow apart China's claim to be the dominant player in Asia, or this threat of a trade war, which, although it causes the foreign policy establishment in Washington to freak out, exerts meaningful pressure on China because it would hurt China much more than the United States. If the U.S. targeted China with tariffs rather than just doing across-the-board tariffs on steel and aluminium, that would really hurt China a lot more than the U.S. So this seems to me the key, and all along I think President Trump has sought to get a solution to the North Korean problem through China, and I do think that's the right way to go about it.
What brilliant analysis. Thank you so much. I want to switch now to talk about your book, The Square and the Tower. It's a magnificent sweep through history, as we'd expect from you, Neil. But I just would love you to explain to our audience watching tonight what they should make of it. Why is it important to their lives here in America today?
Well, most of us, I think, tend to assume that the internet changed everything and Mark Zuckerberg invented social networks and nothing like this has ever been seen before in the history of mankind. And part of the point of my book is to show that that's just nonsense, that the effect of the personal computer and the internet is a lot like the effect of the printing press on 15th and 16th century Europe. And we can learn from history. We can learn, for example, that what happens when you transform the way in which people can network, the way in which they can communicate, often is a revolution. That's the title of your show, Steve. We live in revolutionary times because the internet has created new, enormous, very fast networks. And most people, including the people who built those networks, underestimated the revolutionary consequences of their coming into existence.
And so what do you think, looking forward, that means for the way we think about, you know, let's just take one example, a company at the heart of it, Facebook. How should we think about that in the context of the history?
Steve, I think one of the biggest questions that the Trump administration faces is what to do about Facebook. This is now the most powerful content publisher in American history. Mark Zuckerberg is more powerful than William Randolph Hearst at the height of his power. 45% of Americans get their news from Facebook. About 80% of all news is really consumed by referral from either Facebook or YouTube. These are incredibly powerful companies, but guess what? They're not regulated in any way as content publishers. They're not regarded as media companies. They're treated under mid-1990s legislation as technology platforms with absolutely no liability for what they publish on their platforms. And I think this is really the important thing, a completely non-transparent way of editing and sorting content. The Facebook newsfeed algorithm is the most powerful editor on the planet. And remember, the overwhelming majority of people who work at Facebook, including its founder and chief executive, Mark Zuckerberg, lean to the left. They are liberals. Peter Thiel, I think, is just about one of the last remaining conservatives in Silicon Valley, and he just left. At least he left town and moved to LA. So if you think about it, I think there's a collision coming between the Trump administration and Facebook. And the big question which confronts policymakers is, should you break up these giant technology companies, which is what a lot of people on the left want to do, the antitrust folks, or should you, as Steve Bannon argued shortly before he left the White House, should you regard them as utilities? I mean, in the end, they're becoming the public sphere. They are where our democracy communicates. They are where people consume news. And I do think that Republicans need to think again the question of whether it is right to continue to leave these companies more or less completely unregulated when they are now as powerful as the big TV networks were back in the middle of the 20th century.
Neil, as you say, it's such an important question. Thank you for laying it out for us. One thing I just want to say, I think everyone should read your book. There's a particular bit in it that I know our audience will love, and that's the way you lay out the origins of the administrative state, something we focus on a lot here. But the whole book is brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and hope you can come and join us here in the studio in Los Angeles at some point.
Love to do that, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. We'll be right back with more from The Next Revolution after this break. Stay with us.
If you just sign that first one.
Welcome back, everyone. We were planning at this point to bring you Swamp Watch, but with so much news going on, we've decided to hold it over till next week. It is an absolute blockbuster on foreign lobbying in the DC swamp. You do not want to miss it. But now, just in the last segment of the show, we heard from Neil Ferguson on the proposed Trump-Kim Jong-un summit. Let's see what our panel think about that. Namiki, I just noticed that Bill Maher, not one usually to praise the president, was saying, actually, look, the liberals should stop hating on Donald Trump over this because, to be honest, this is what President Obama wanted to do, and they should be gracious about it. Do you agree with that?
Part of that is true. It is always good to be able to talk with your enemies. But Donald Trump is not somebody who is reading his briefings. Let's start with that. He's not an expert on North Korea. He's not setting in. Rex Tillerson, for instance, tried to do this, and Donald Trump criticized Rex Tillerson for having conversations or attempting to have conversations. Even President Obama, when he opened up conversations with Iran and Cuba, sent his Secretary of State. So I think what's of concern to most people.
You want the protocol.
I'm not normally a protocol kind of gal, but Donald Trump is not somebody who is the most sophisticated when it comes to foreign policy and unpredictable. And not to mention, he's even changed his own opinions in the last few weeks. I think ultimately the real question is here, what is North Korea getting out of this, and what are we getting out of this? Right now, North Korea has not said that they're going to reverse their arsenal or denuclearize, and that's sort of what we've been trying to get. I think ultimately we should know before going in.
I love listening to people on the left talk about these types of issues. Donald Trump got Kim Jong-un to come to the table because of what he did with his foreign policy. Simple as that. Something Barack Obama couldn't do. You have any, what's going to come out of it? We don't know. But it's a $28 billion economy. They've been hit with all kinds of sanctions. Who's in the driver's seat here? The American economy that's coming off the best year probably in modern history of a president, and he now wants to go and negotiate, understanding that China really does drive the policy for North Korea. You couldn't have a better person negotiating on our behalf, and he's proven it with the year that he's got in the American economy. And yet, we have people still criticizing this man, accusing him of being too stupid to negotiate our policies, and then implying that, no offense, but you don't know what Donald Trump's, what he reads. She says it as if that somebody like, I monitor what Donald Trump does. Oh, somebody said that. Well, it's been leaked. Nobody knows what Donald Trump reads.
Well, can I just rebut that real quick? Because this is not designed by Donald Trump. South Korean President Moon was the one who is claiming to have opened up the negotiations.
That's the immediate, exactly, that's a good thing.
But I think you can take issue with the president on a number of issues, but here saying, well, his Secretary of State should go because the Secretary of State before went, and that didn't work. Exactly. You know, every time North Korea has come to the table, let me just finish here, because I understand.
We didn't set our Secretary of State.
Listen, but here's the point. Yes, things are being done differently this time, and I believe that Kim Jong-un is coming to the table because he's scared and he's hurting. And I think the unpredictability, although it doesn't always work when the president tweets impulsively in the morning, here I think there is a method to it. And I think strategic patience was not only a bad idea, it was incredibly dangerous. I think the Obama foreign policy, and I am by no means hawkish. I want these two men to come to the table because I want there to be peace on the Korean Peninsula, not just for North and South Koreans who are dying and starved to death, but also for the Americans who fight over there and who work over there. And, you know, the fact that Moon Jae-in is bringing the president to this table is a fantastic thing. You can't criticize the president out of both sides of your mouth, and if this works, he should get credit for it.
The stakes are too high, though. This is not a reality show. The stakes are new. I mean, really.
What do you want? Do you want it to work, or do you want?
I want him to send a Secretary of State who actually knows about the policy. President Trump doesn't.
We've had our fantastic heated debate. That's it for that one. I just want to say one thing. With my experience having worked in government, every time I see someone like the president, in this case, subverting the protocol and the usual diplomatic ways of doing it, I think that's great, because that's how you make
And he can also get in a room and read somewhere.
There you go. Next up, we take a look ahead to the president's trip to the border wall this week and the Trump administration's battle with California over its sanctuary state policy. Governor Jerry Brown is afraid to talk to me about it, but our panel isn't. Prototypes for his proposed border wall near San Diego on Tuesday. He's expected to be met with as many boos as cheers. Trump's supporters will be out in full force to show their approval of the wall, as will California Democrats, eager to show their opposition. This comes just days after Attorney General Jeff Sessions slapped a lawsuit on California over its sanctuary state policies. So, Kennedy, Jerry Brown was very unhappy with the Jeff Sessions lawsuit. He had a go at Jeff Sessions, at Donald Trump, and at Fox News. You know, I wanted him to join us here tonight to talk about the sanctuary state policy.
I would love to see that. I mean, you're a resident of California. You're also an immigrant, and you have a very different voice in this conversation. I think that would be really, really interesting. And I don't think we're hearing from all sides here, and we're not hearing from the people who are invested very differently in this debate. debate, and it's really boiled down to this politicized, hyperbolic screaming match that doesn't fix our immigration system in this country. And, you know, and there has to be a little bit of concession from each side. I happen to be more of an open immigration person. I think by and large, the people who come to this country want to work hard, they want to raise their kids in safer places, they want to start businesses, and they want to add to the economy. You know, I'm an optimist, and people on the right are supposed to have an optimistic view of human nature. I do, but I also understand it's not right to shield violent felons from deportation.
Right.
And that's one of the basic things that, you know, there are a lot of people on the left who understand that, and that's a basic point. It's not going into immigrant communities and frog marching people across the border. That is wrong, and that is un-American. But you cannot house criminals who wish to do people harm here.
That's the thing. I just want to put that directly to Namiki, if I may, Kevin, because I just think that the thing that drives me crazy about this debate is that when you point things out like that we can make a distinction between violent criminals. You know, as we saw in the case this week, last week, the Oakland mayor, and the warning to many criminals, including, you know, sex offenders, really people you do not want in your community. Why can't we all agree, including Democrats, that we want to get those people out and then discuss the law-abiding majority, even if we concede that it's a majority? Why can't Democrats, why do they want to make this political point by defending even these worst criminals?
Well, I don't think Democrats are defending worst criminals. That's actually not true. What they're doing is they're defending a policy which actually protects communities more. Let's pull back the curtain for a second here. Let's pull back the curtain. The reason why sanctuary cities exist is because those who are undocumented do not feel safe in their communities to go to law enforcement when something happens. They feel like if they go and they complain that they were burglarized or some violent crime happened, they are going to be taken into custody and then called by ICE and deported. These are hardworking people that may have been here their whole lives. They could be dreamers. And suddenly, you have a criminal justice issue. The real issue here, if we pull back the curtain, and I know you love to swamp watch, is that you have Jeff Sessions and his cronies who are trying to drive up law enforcement because they are invested in it. These are the people who are invested in private prisons. These are the people invested in
if you want to get into that, no, I'm not. If you want to get into that, then let me point out to you that the unbelievable scale of the donations to Democrats from the prison officers' unions.
I agree. Absolutely. One of the most powerful unions in the state of California.
I am not disagreeing with you. I think we should shut down
unions in the state of California. Right. They control politicians. They write the laws. It is so one-sided.
But I
we're not much time. Last word to Kevin.
We're missing a bigger point. The best, the thing that a country has the best is its people. So what people say when they are for open borders is, let's let the best come over. Somebody who's willing to walk 1,000 miles to get to your economy is somebody that would have contributed to where they were from. We put $70 billion into Mexico every year, maquiladoras, plants, manufacturing, etc., to keep people there and build their economy. And the best and brightest leave to come here. And everybody goes, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Mexico can't get over what it needs to get over if we keep allowing their people to freely come over and take advantage of Americans, which is ultimately what we end up here.
Then end the entitlement.
Okay,
there's a lot of things we need to end.
I'm so sorry. We're going to have to stop. With this brilliant panel, we could literally have an hour on every single topic. I'm so sorry. We have to leave it there. Thank you. When we come back, though, the latest on the populist revolution in Italy. That is next. Finally tonight, we have something extremely strange for you. This, as I always remind you, is the home of positive populism, and there's more news on that front out of Europe this week. Voters in Italy have sent a strong message to its career politicians by handing parliamentary victories to two different populist movements, the Five Star Movement and a party known as the League. One consequence of all this is a potential return for former Prime Minister and media tycoon Silvio Berlusconi. That could lead to all sorts of slightly weird things happening. Just take a look at the birthday present Berlusconi sent Vladimir Putin last year. Yes, it's a duvet cover with their faces on it. I guess it gives a whole new meaning to the phrase strange political bedfellows. Wow. That is all for tonight. My shocked panel did a great job. We love seeing them. Hope we can see you again next week. Life, Liberty and Levin is up next with special guest Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm Steve Hilton. The next revolution will be televised next Sunday.